is your practice going this week?
I think I will benefit greatly from the Thursday when you discuss about practicing.
Oh yeah.
I'm trying some. So last week I was practicing very well, but I think I may have burned out.
So what were you doing last week that went so well for you?
Last week I was practicing at least an hour a day, like an hour during the day, and then towards the nighttime I'd stay here for like an hour or 2 hours just to
Do homework and stuff.
Keep on practicing.
Oh, nice.
But I think that's what burned me out because I wasn't used to that.
Yeah.
So like this week I tried staying and like.
Because what Genesis and Stephanie were saying is like they're just not used to the amount of work that was expected here with orchestra and everything else, and so which is understandable. And I think the good thing about what you guys have as you transferred in is that you don't. You almost have all your basics out of the way, basically,
Yeah.
right? So you don't have to worry about like astronomy or English or math or whatever.
Yeah.
So take advantage of that you have more space for your major, and you can really focus. But I would say that you're doing something right as you're splitting up the time. You need to find the minimum. The minimum hours that you think you should have. I think 2 is probably a good minimum, and you need to target that. So it's without really talking about how to do the practice, just think about the amount of time that you say, okay, I need 2 hours of time. Let's figure out when that is. Is it in the morning? Do I have to come before class? Do I have to stay after class? What? So maybe tell me what happens on Monday. What's your schedule like Monday?
I have an 8 a.m. class, and then afterwards I typically have a 2 to 3. I think it's a 3-hour gap between that class to orchestra.
Okay.
So I can practice that time.
And then what about after orchestra?
After orchestra, I have an hour, and then I have another class at 2.
Okay, so as far as the 8 to 3 o'clock, you could practice between 9 and 12. You probably want to have lunch between 1 and 2.
So I could use the time after orchestra to eat.
Yeah, and then you have the class 2 to 3, and then you could probably stay 3 to 5 to practice, and then you can go home and do whatever you need to do.
Sure.
And do homework and go work out or whatever you do, or work out and then after dinner practice, whatever the schedule is for you. I know working out around 3 to 5 is like the cool time to work out with all the people who are pumping up and around that time. But
I like going at that time. It's busy.
I know that's the whole point.
I'm trying to get on a machine. Yeah, I'm there for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
Because I have to wait, but
Yeah.
I don't like going. It's busy.
Yeah. Well, I haven't been. I should go. Anyway, but the point is that 9 to 12 is probably the best time, and then 3 to 5. So if you could say to yourself, okay, I'm going to practice, 11 to 12 right before orchestra, like 10:45 to just before orchestra, so you get a good full hour in without feeling that you're rushing. And then afterwards, maybe 3 to 5, you could pick an hour in that time too, like 3 to 5, 3 to 4. Maybe if you want, you can stay a little longer. But if you limit yourself before 5 and say I got to do 2 hours before 5, then when you leave, you feel pretty accomplished. Just the fact that you reached that goal.
Yeah.
So what about Wednesdays? The same?
Wednesdays are the same. Yes. Yeah, Wednesdays are the same.
Okay. And
Except
Fridays?
for a class. No, yeah, Wednesdays are the same. Fridays are the same. Tuesday and Thursday are the busiest.
Okay, so now we're looking at Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 to 12, and 3 to 5.
Basically, yeah.
Okay? So you got 5 hours Monday, Wednesday, and Friday that you could do your minimum 2 hours. Now, that's before 5 o'clock, which if you make it like, okay, I'm going to school, it's like going to work. Don't come back. Like you leave in the morning, come back at 5. Like clocking in, clocking out. Like you make your job going to school.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to try to do.
Do you see how that works?
Because I can go back home and like eat some food and just come back and like, be ready to go.
Yeah.
Because what I was trying the first 2 weeks was just staying here all day, and that hurt me out because I'd be here from 8 a.m. all the way to 8 p.m. And once it like 8 p.m. struck, I could not get anything done past like 8. Like I can work, but it won't stay, you know. But yeah.
Well, maybe that's what you need to do. Just make it like, okay, 5 o'clock. I've done my 2 hours. I'm done. If you want to do more, you do more.
If I can do more.
Yeah, if you can. I mean, you probably have homework. Maybe you have other things to do.
Oh, I meant like energy wise.
Yeah.
You think once I know that I'm tired, I should try to keep on going, or should I try to keep on going?
Well,
because I've heard 2 different stories about like that situation. Like I've heard one of my professors. You remember Ingrid?
mm-hmm.
She would keep on going, like, and she told me if you get tired, just keep on going. So I don't know.
Well, Ingrid is a very intense person.
She is.
And she's super smart. So, here's what I would say. She's right. But this is what I would do. Go for a walk. Take a 5-minute break. Stretch. Do a lot of stretching. Go for a walk. I mean, I'm just talking like just get out, come right back. This is where like smokers have an advantage. Like they just like, they look cooler like thinking about life, and then go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, don't smoke. I'm just saying that they have this built-in break in them. You know, just go outside, hang out 5 minutes, go right back. Don't leave more than 5 minutes though, because you know, it just takes too long out of your life.
You think it breaks your focus and you just start dwindling?
5 minutes is all you need. Every 30 minutes, you have 5-minute break. That's probably okay. And you could stay in your room. You just like, you know, look at your music. You could think about it. Physically, you could be taking a break.
You think it's better to time everything just so you know? Okay.
I think it's helpful. Just like, and this is what I'm coming to later. But let's talk about the bigger picture though. But just to finish up with what Ingrid was saying, come back and start practicing slow, like slow motion, and just practice like one thing really slow. Try to be as relaxed as possible, as effective as possible. Pretty soon you get more energy. You get like a second wind. She's right. You just have to keep trying.
Okay.
But if you try hard, like physically, and you're like moving and squeezing, you're gonna get frustrated. You're gonna get tired. You're gonna get hurt.
Okay.
So you gotta stretch. You gotta move around. Do you understand?
Mm-hmm.
You can't just like keep trying hard. You gotta think, why is it not working?
Okay.
Maybe it's my thumbs. Maybe I'm sitting wrong. Maybe I'm actually playing the wrong bowing or the wrong fingering or the wrong rhythm.
Yeah.
So you know, just think. You could sit there for 5 minutes and think about what you're doing, and your body's taking a break, and then you do it again, and you'd be surprised. I mean, it's going to work because you're thinking it. Your brain can make your hands work better, and that's basically what your brain does for everything. So, but we have this thing about our hands just doing what they do, and we're not connecting to it. Think about it up in your brain. It's just think it,
Mm-hmm.
and that could be your 5-minute break, or you can walk around. Now, as far as like being really, really tired, yeah, so let's just say you practice like crazy and it's like the 3rd week and you're like, okay, I just need a break. I'm going to go home now. All right. But sometimes if you push yourself, I mean, let's just compare it to working out.
Okay.
Have you ever just like, okay, I'll do one more rep. And that was like your best rep? Has it ever happened to you? Or you're on a machine, you're like, I'll just do 5 more minutes. And then you're like struggling and you did 5 minutes and you're like, yeah, I did it. You know what I mean? Like, have you ever done that?
I try to stay to like, I have a plan already planned out for me. And I try to finish my reps and but lately there have been days where I'm just like, I don't want to finish this. So I just like, and I think that I've done enough. So I just like stop.
I mean, for me, like, you know, to like, say if I'm on a machine, like Stairmaster could be really hard, even if just 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm gonna do 10 minutes. That's easy. And then it's like 4 minutes. You're like, oh my god, I can't finish.
Mm-hmm.
You know. And then you get to minute like 9. You're like, only 60 more seconds. And then you finish it.
That I understand. Yes.
You know what I mean? And you finish it, and you feel like, man, you're really tired. But like you push yourself that extra mile, the extra.
Okay, I get what you're trying to say.
So that's what I'm trying to say is that you're just there. You're like pooped out. You don't have any inspiration.
Think it's a mind thing then?
There's part of that. Now, the physical thing, if you actually hurt, your hands are like pulsating because of pain. That's different. If it's just you like fighting yourself, you have to like fight that.
Mm.
You have to, and the timing thing is important because you say, look, I need 30 more minutes. I only did an hour and a half, and in fact, that first hour didn't count because so and so called me and I talked for like 20 minutes, or whatever, you know what I mean? Like you have to really track your minutes. Um,
But at that point, would that hour count though?
well, I'm just saying, like, all kinds of things. Yeah, I don't think it would count. In fact, one of my friends said, if you go in and the practice room and actually count the minutes that you're playing, and if you're there for 3 hours, you may only have an hour and 20 minutes of actual notes.
Yeah.
So, counting the minutes of your actual playing could be very revealing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to counter that, if you're thinking about the music and if you're like actively like putting markings in and thinking about it and singing it, clapping the music, or just thinking about it in your head, listening to it. If there's you're listening to yourself, you're like play and listen, play and listen. That's practice. But I'm talking about like just like being on the phone, looking at your phone, walking around, going, talking to people on the couches. You know what I mean? It's like that doesn't count. Just because you practice from 10 to 12 doesn't mean you really practice the whole time if you're talking to people. Anyway, so going back to your Tuesday and Thursday. So do you think you have 2 hours on those days?
So starting from 8 to now, I only have probably like an hour because before this was orchestra, and then I had that hour between there.
So you want to eat?
Yeah, that's what I typically do, and then I try to warm up 30 minutes right before my lesson.
Right.
And then afterwards, I'm completely free.
Yeah. So on a day like today on your lesson, you can warm up, and if you have like a really big lesson, like you have to perform something, you probably come early and practice a little bit. You could be here at 7 and practice.
Whew.
Every January what we do?
What?
We have the Cello Breakfast Club. I haven't told you guys about it.
What's that?
The first 3 days of school, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We get here 7 o'clock, practice till 8. I bring donuts and kolaches and coffee.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. And people are here in the morning.
Just gotta wake up early.
Yeah, it's just to show people like, hey, you can practice in the morning. You can do it. Just go.
That's what I've been wanting to wake up early to get practicing done in the morning, so I don't have to practice, throughout the day. But it's just getting up part is hard.
Yeah, well, like I said, find your limit. If it's 2 hours, that's your lower limit. You have to like do every day.
But you can increases over time. Correct?
You could, of course. Some days you're like, oh, I got to practice that orchestra music. You do that for like 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some days it's like, oh, the jury's coming like in a couple of weeks, so you're practicing more, like 3 hours. But what I'm trying to say is like establish your lower limit, and 2 hours is
what you
good.
can actually do.
What you can do every day, and that's like
and actually focus.
Yeah, and that's your minimum. It's like you're not leaving the practice room until you do that.
Okay.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Next, then I guess Thursday would be the same, practically. You only have like the evening to practice.
That 1 hour, and then I'm not free until
after studio.
Oh no, actually I have more hours because between orchestra and studio, so I think that's 3 hours. 12.
Oh, it's an hour and a half.
That one, so 2 hours.
Like an hour and a half.
2 hours and a half.
Because you can leave at 2 o'clock, like around 2 o'clock, 1:45.
Oh, yeah, then yeah.
So you have an hour and a half or something.
Yeah.
And then the evening. So we're looking at Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Got 5 hours. Tuesday and Thursday potentially have like something like 4 hours if we include the evening. So on Tuesday and Thursday, these are the days that you may have to come early, like practice from 7 to 8 to really just get something in. You would probably be really tired and then sleep early. But if you could do that, you wouldn't have to stay late unless you have to come back for whatever, a group meeting or
True.
music.
Thursdays I am tired by the end of the day because studio after studio I'm just
it's intense in studio because we're focused in there.
Yeah.
And you guys are doing a good job. I mean, I'm really happy I was going because you guys are doing more and more scales. We're building a little tradition here. Anyway, so and then the weekend, maybe that's when you do 3 hours every day or two. You know, you just keep your minimum.
Mhm.
You know. Now, what to practice? Well, it's a good idea to think about minutes and sections of practice. In minutes and 10 minutes and in sections. So we have 2 hours. You should probably dedicate a good 30 to 45 minutes on scales. I would say 30 minutes would be a good
Think
idea.
hour too much?
No, it's good. But I mean, I'm getting a baseline here.
Yeah.
30 minutes on scales would be a good idea. An hour is even better. I think an hour at this point for you is going to be better. Then the next hour would be rep and you know, step check and whatever we're working on. Next, you know, how we warm up is a good idea. So I'm gonna, you know, we're doing these open string exercises. So maybe you could do open string exercises, and it's like 5 minutes of that. And then you have, we can have these. We were doing the ringing tones. That'll be like 2 minutes. And then we have, you know, maybe another couple of minutes of some bowing exercises added in there. It'd be like 10 minutes for the ringing tones and bowing exercises. And so that's it. And then you do a scale, and you do 50 minutes of that or so. And you could just pick some. And then from there, you move on to your rep. So now, let me show you a video that kind of, I want to show you this video here. So over here. So this is David Finkel. He was the cellist of the Emerson String Quartet, and he's very famous. So just listen.
Hi, I thought it might be interesting for you to see where I practice and how I make it easy for myself to get work done in very short periods of time. The first thing that's important is find a safe place to put your cello away that you don't have to put it all the way in the case, because that can take a long time to get in and out. And here's what I do. If you follow me right over here, you see my cello's hanging up on this bookshelf, and it's got two little eyelets secure in the wood, and this is speaker wire, and it just goes right through the scroll, and the end pin is actually stuck into the floor, so it's supported very securely here. It's not going to go anywhere. And all I have to do in order to start practicing is just unhook the scroll out of there and take it out, take the bow out into the C string, and I'm ready to go. So let's go over here to where I actually sit. Now the first thing that I have to have, especially because I kind of have a bad back, is I have to have a chair with good support in the back. This is a special chair that comes all the way from Australia. You can actually adjust the height of the legs and the back and everything. So I have it adjusted for myself so that I'm really comfortable. So when I sit down, I'm very comfortably supported in the back, and I can sit here for quite a long time. Now you'll notice, in terms of light, I have a big window here, but it's not really enough light coming through at all times of the day. So the best kind of light is one that comes right straight down on where your music is. This is just a cheap hardware store shade with a bulb in it. Turns on and off. But when I put a piece of music here, you can see it really, 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 really well. And what's important, of course, about this thing, it's not just a regular music stand. It's something I made. It's very hardwood. It's very, very stable. So that when I write, I can write on it. I can press really hard, and nothing goes through the back, or the stand doesn't fall over. There's nothing worse than trying to write on a music stand that's falling over. You notice in my hand I have a very, very sharp pencil, and I have a special eraser on the end of it. There's nothing worse than when those little erasers get all dirty and they smudge your music. So for that reason, I keep a pencil sharpener handy, and I actually have lots of these little erasers. Right next to me here, I have a practice mute, which I use quite a bit to make the sound softer. That way I force myself to play really loud without disturbing the neighbors, and also not fooling myself, because it's a small room, into thinking I'm making a big sound. My little scrubber here cleans the strings off. That's another lesson we talk about rosin and cleaning the strings. I have my rosin right here. I have my little 4-minute timer clock that I got at Starbucks, which if you press the one button, it gives you 4 minutes, and it makes you do something for 4 whole minutes. Even if it's a simple little passage, you'll get a lot done that way.
That's why this whole thing, there's a lot of practical advice here, and probably
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, I could do that. I could figure it out in my own practice space. But just what are the important points here? One is his cello is easily accessible. His music's easily accessible. He's comfortable. He could see his music, well. It's a space that feels comfy, and his cello is ready to go.
Yeah.
And then he has that timer. Of course, now we have. I mean, this was 10 years ago when he made it. We had a timer there on our phones, but you could have a timer on your phone, and just if you're working on something, put a timer on. 5 minutes. Okay, I'm going to work on this for 5 minutes, and it could be just one measure. You'll be surprised. Think about like tomorrow. If you had a paper due, what are you doing tonight?
That paper, hopefully.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what I'm trying to say is, put a timer on. Impose a deadline on yourself. We do better when we have deadlines, most of us.
That makes sense.
So if you have a 5-minute deadline, it's like, I gotta play this. I gotta figure out how to play this triplet. Do it. And if after 5 minutes, if you're done, great, move on. Do another thing for 5 minutes. So part of what's happening to you guys is that you have so much information and you're overwhelmed. So re-watch our videos, watch them again, and just like when you're having like lunch, just like you don't have to watch all the minutes, but just
I'll
like
watch them before I go to sleep.
Scan through them, kind of just
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, well, watch them before you go to sleep, and then what you want to do is just take one thing we worked on. So let's just say it's intonation. Let's just say it's bow hold. Let's just say it's like playing by the bridge. Whatever it is, try not to do like all 10 things. Do one thing, and then add on to that one thing that you feel is really secure, and do 2 things really well. We have to get things so secure that they're always there and you can manipulate them. It takes a while before that happens, when your brain is able to do that. Our brain is very different than other brains. Not that engineers aren't smart, or that lawyers aren't smart, but because we have to like coordinate ourselves, so complicated what we do.
Also, we're perfectionists.
And we're perfectionists mostly.
Yeah.
Especially when it's like when we really try hard, like Ingrid, for example. She could like speak several languages, and I had her for my DMA classes. We were there
Oh,
at the
really?
same time. We graduated together.
Oh.
DMA, and she's younger, but she would always have this like oh, I don't know, like kind of like as if she wasn't smart, feeling about her.
Yeah.
But she was the smartest person in the room. She has she was very modest. She tried not to show off that she was smart.
Yeah.
But boy, she's very smart. So you gotta watch out, because like someone like that is like, is very smart, meaning that you could be talking to them and you feel like an idiot because they know more than you.
Yeah.
So, but she never makes you feel like that. I mean, to students, especially in college, that's what's cool about her, is that she's very modest. But I guess if she doesn't like somebody, it's a different story.
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, we digress. So play me a scale. Pick a scale on the C string, any scale, major or minor. Let's play it. We're gonna start getting into this method of like, I'm just gonna call out scales, okay?
All right.
So just you pick one on the C
Can it
string.
be memorized?
Yeah, well, whatever. You can look at the music. You can
I'm sorry
memorize.
if I mess up, but I want to make sure I have this memorized.
So a lot of people get messed up on minor scales because I don't know why, except that I think is they're not thinking that it sounds like minor. It's like a ear thing.
Yeah.
You're not thinking it's like C minor. You're just because there's one thing that confuses people is that you hear it, the 5, 6, 7, 8 is like raised as if
Mhm.
it's major. And this is why you get triggered to go back to the fingering or positions for major.
Did I do that?
Yeah. Twice.
It's not the same?
No, you played an E natural instead of an E
Oh,
flat.
yeah.
That's why you did it wrong.
But I don't understand how I could, let's say did have it memorized and I know that it was 3 flats, because, it's
I don't
C
know why
minor.
it happens either. Because why do we say the wrong things in the situations of what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
it's like you say something. It's like I didn't mean to say that. I'm sorry, but you knew not to say it and you still said it.
Yeah. It's weird.
There's a lot of weird things like that in life. Now, in cello, what I can understand about it is there's a sound that is major, and then there's a sound that is minor. Melodic minor is like a major key just with a flat 3, but on the way down is natural minor, which is 3 flats.
Mhm.
Harmonic minor is the one that sounds the most different because it's the same on the way up and down, and it has flat 6 and high sharp 7. So it's in a way that one's easy to remember.
Mhm.
What I'm trying to say is there's like a tone, like a color almost
Yeah.
to the scale.
Yeah.
You're not catching it. You're not hearing it.
Okay.
And so that's what's triggering you to go to E natural. Besides the sound, it's like a feeling. It's like it's going to be here. Your finger's going to be this way in first position and fourth position. On the way back, it changes to fourth finger. That's why it's easier on the way back, because it's like you have to shift there.
Mhm.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm explaining it, and maybe it's
So-
too brainy, but this
No,
is
it's
what
like the easiest way to understand it is that, of course, major and minor are gonna have 2 different sounds, because major sounds
Yeah.
happy and minor sounds.
I mean, at the basic, at the basic level, yeah.
So I should think about it that way.
Yeah. Also, you have to just that the 5, 6, 7 and melodic are going to be like they're going to be changed.
Yeah.
Different ascent and descent. The third is the one that's not changing.
Yeah.
So C minor, you have an E flat all the time. You're going to have 3 of them. A minor, you have C natural. D minor, you have F natural. G minor, you have B flat. F sharp minor, you have A natural. B minor, you have D natural. E minor, you have G natural. G sharp minor, you have B. C sharp minor, you have E, etc. E flat, you got B, E, G flat, and B flat, you have B flat.
Okay.
A flat, you have C flat.
Yeah.
I gave you all
Making
of them
sense.
except for F, you have A flat.
Making sense.
I gave all of them to you.
Yeah.
It's just you just memorize the system.
Yeah.
Have you ever been like in a conversation with like people that like love Harry Potter,
Yes.
and they just like they know everything about everything, even like all the outtakes from the movies and how like it's different from the book, and they list like everything like that.
Yeah.
We just have to do that with scales. You gotta memorize everything. Just how I just said it. How do I know that? There's a lot of practice in scales.
But when let's break down that scale I just did. If I was a beginner and I wanted to learn that scale, would you literally learn everything, like fingering and like, okay, this flat, like how many flats, and just think about it all the time?
Well, it is overwhelming from a young person's perspective, but you have to build it up by teaching them how to sight read and reading the intervals. The problem is that we read fingerings. So if a student can understand that a scale is just a major scale, for example, is 2 whole steps and a half step, 3 whole steps and a half step. Then, and they know that in their 4 fingers they have like a whole step, half step, whole step, extensions. Then that's the first step, I think. You're just understanding a space to a space is a third, a line to a line is a third. A space to the next line is a second, and a line to the next space is a second. It'd be a whole step or a half step. A space, skip another space to another line, that's a perfect fourth. A space to skip 2 spaces, that's a perfect fifth. You understand? A line going up, skipping 2 lines to the next space is a sixth, and then a seventh, and then an eighth, or an octave.
Okay.
An octave is the same whether it's an octave is an octave, whether it's a tenor clef, treble clef, or a bass clef. So if you see some notes in treble clef, you're like, I don't read treble clef very well. Well, does it look like an octave? Yeah, so it's an octave. And the bottom note's an E, so the top note's an E too.
Yeah.
You see, it's just like accumulation of what we know. I know it sounds complicated what I'm saying, but you could digest it at your own level.
Yeah, I've never thought about, like, when I read music, just like, oh, this is a fifth above because, you know, it's like, that's how it's written. I don't think about, like, you know, intervals like that when I play music.
You should. It's easier. Because it's harder at first, but when you get past this point of, like, knowing exactly, I mean, I'm just like at the basic level. I have some friends that are just like, they're like perfect, you know. But when you think about intervals, there's some measurement. So on the page, the reason why people are sight reading really well is not only because they could read and they could sing it at the same time, could solfege it, whatever, but there's also a visual thing. Like they see the lines, you know, like boom, 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 boom. They know. It's like automatic.
Yeah.
So, how about a major? Play A major. G strings. Put your hand with no extension. Put your all 4 fingers on C sharp.
I mean, C sharp.
Yeah. Now curve your fingers.
Oh, that's what we were saying the other day during studio.
There you go.
To just
Yeah.
go back. That's gonna take a bit to get used to, cause I previously learned it like
the other way.
Yeah,
it's easier this way, and if it becomes a standard for you, then you could go back to the other one, and you could you could do the other method better. Now there are
just
some.
Learn this first.
There are some areas where doing the forward extension would be fine, but try to make yourself play backwards extension.
So whenever I'm in first position, whenever I'm in half position,
just first position.
First position.
Yeah. It's just extended forward, but instead, like, put all 4 fingers in second position, which is low second.
Oh, low second.
Yeah, that's C sharp, right?
Yeah.
And then extend.
Just extend back.
Yeah. Is that more relaxing?
So for first position, am I gonna keep my thumb behind my second finger or behind the first finger?
Yeah, behind second. In extension.
Yeah, it's more.
Now for me,
relaxing.
Yeah, for me, if I don't have an extension, my thumb is behind first finger.
Oh, okay.
But for some people with smaller hands, maybe behind second finger the whole time. In fact, standard is behind second finger. But later on, you can have it down here.
Okay. I'll mess around with that.
Yeah, but having the second finger and the thumb together in extension is very important. All right, let's find your extension. An A major. Ready and go. We got 1. That's a 1. Shift to 1. Shift to 1. 2. And 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. For the bridge. Put your hand in on the G sharp with the fourth finger, no extension. First D string.
Oh, no extension?
Yeah, no, but there you go. Now extend. Go. Go down the scale. Now freeze. Play open. Now put your hand on the G string as you play open D, but no extension. No, you just have to curve. Now extend fourth finger. You understand? It's like you could do this.
So you drop down and then you stand back for.
I mean, you could stay open. What I'm trying to do is show you that you could relax your hand and open up again. If you're doing this, it could cause tension. So by releasing it, you remind yourself not to keep tension. Open, but don't squeeze.
Okay. Alright.
Do you understand what I just said?
Yeah, I understand.
What you want to do is you want to find moments where you can release tension. Tension is good. That's what helps us sit up. We have some kind of tense muscles in our body.
Mm-hmm.
So they're holding us up. We have this core of our body, right?
Yeah.
When we stand up, we're tensing our muscles. But when you're walking, you're tensing your muscles. But are you like tight the whole time? You're like flexing,
Sometimes.
right? Like you tense up and release.
Yeah.
But if you're tight, you're having some kind of attack, you stroke or something. go to the hospital. But you understand? You go up the stairs. You engage your muscles. You release them. So playing the cello is like that. You're engaging your muscles. You're releasing your muscles.
Okay.
Okay. Now I want you to learn all the G string scales, major and minor. Because we're finishing them this week. Everybody has to do them. And so I'll write that in your notes. Next is did we talk about any popper?
Any popper? No.
So tell me which popper? How's it? What were you gonna say?
On the first lesson, you put it down on my sheet, but we never talked about it. And you put popper 11.
Okay. Do you have that popper book?
Yeah, I do.
Have you practiced that one?
I looked at popper 11, but
Okay.
I haven't.
Well, let me ask you a question before we
Which
start
ones
on
have I
that.
played?
Yeah.
Do you mind if I take a look?
Sure.
Because I think I've only played 3 of them.
Well, it's good to know which ones you've done.
I'm sure it was number 3. The one I think David is playing.
Yes, number 3.
Number 3. I played that one. Oh, there's writing in here. Oh, yeah, because I played this one. I forgot that this was in a new book.
Well, let's look at number 11.
Okay.
Now let's talk about what number 11's all about, and let's see what it's all about, and then we could figure out how to practice it.
All right. When I was looking at it, I didn't really like it because it looks like it jumps around a lot.
Well, it's not that bad. Now here is the cello talks that he has.
Just do TED Talks.
Yeah, just look up cello talks.
Do you listen to podcasts?
Oh yeah.
Are there any cellists that do podcasts?
I have a friend who does a podcast called Classical Chops. It's my friend, and he interviews like some artists and composers and stuff. He has a lot of interesting cello talks here. And basically they're like 2-minute like lessons. How to hold a bow, rosin, how to play at the tip, kind of thing. Yeah. Vibrato, just stuff like. I want to show you this is. I think this is an interesting one.
When we talk about making an even sound with the bow from frog to tip, one of the things we have to talk about is bow pressure. And keeping the bow pressure the same or as close as possible the same from the frog to the tip is much more difficult than one might think. In order to show what I'm talking about, I have a postage scale here. Take a look at this. And I'm going to use it to measure how
don't know if
much
this is
pressure I
accurate or
need to
not.
put on
This is
the tip of the bow in order to equal the pressure that I get at the frog. And the first thing I'm going to do is to take the bow and just lay my hand on the scale and just drop the weight of my arm onto the scale. And I'm not really pressing down, I'm just holding on. And you can see it comes in at 2¼ pounds, okay? Now the next thing I'll do is move the bow out about 1/3 of the way, and I'll press down to see how hard I'm already pressing down quite hard to do that. And now I'm going to move it to the halfway, and I'm going to press down again, and now I have to press down really, really, really hard to do that. Now I'm going to go 3/4 of the way out, press down again, and I can barely make it reach the 2¼ mark. And then I'm going to go all the way to the tip, and guess what? Even if I'm doing this with my hand, I can't get to 2¼ pounds of pressure. So this is quite a challenge for any cellist to get the same amount of pressure at the tip as you get at the frog.
So, but he talks later about, there's another one where he talks about how to get that pressure going. But isn't that interesting? I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
But, you know, just look at the cello chat, cello talks and stuff. Okay, so now let's talk about popper and what it's all about, so you can understand how to practice. So for bow strokes, we're doing a basic détaché bow stroke, articulate and release kind of feeling. And we articulate and release. Well, there's two ways to go about it. One is with détaché and articulate release bow stroke I'm going to give you right now. Another way to be more intense about it is to practice martelé bow stroke, which are hammer bow strokes, which are have a really much more aggressive articulation beginning and a really quick stop. See. So we practice this. I mean, it's kind of intense to do it that way, but it's a way of doing playing extreme practice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, going back to the first one, is what we've already been learning. You get each note, and you wiggle right and left. And you try to find the minimum amount of pressure you need to make it wiggle. So let me find on the C string. See, if I go like this, that's good enough. Can you try?
So you want to find the minimum amount?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Place it at the balance point. Play that fourth finger, F, the first finger, the first note of the piece. It's a fourth finger.
Oh.
Balance. Make it go right and left. You're going up and down. Make it go right and left. See? Now play.
Make the string go right and left?
Yes.
What's the difference between up and down?
You're going
So
up
I
and
can
down
see
like
it go-
this. You're going up and down
Oh.
like that. This
Oh,
way,
yeah.
right and left.
Like this, right?
Yeah. Now play. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now right and left.
On the A.
No, that same note. Up. So you want to find that minimum. See, this is the maximum. See, I'm putting lots of weight in there. Try. Minimum. Try.
On every note?
Yeah. So like this. See. On every note. We won't do the whole thing.
I know.
Get the right angle. Go.
I'm continuing?
Yeah,
Okay.
A string. Wiggle. So you want to use the middle third of the bow, like balance point to about right here.
Okay.
Okay, now next note, E natural. Wiggle. Now, if you get tired, you're doing it wrong. You notice your fingers like that. So when we're doing this, we're playing slow motion. But a couple of things you got to think about. One, you're playing slow motion, but your brain is thinking very quickly.
Okay, so slow down the brain?
No.
No?
Your brain is thinking much faster than your hands.
Yes.
So, but you want to build up a consistency because this music doesn't have any rest, right? It just continues.
Yeah.
Well, it has a lot of notes back to back to back to back. And that's how we want to perform. We don't want to stop.
Yeah.
So when we're playing at the basic level, we want to play slow enough that we can understand what was happening and we could read the notes well, but also fast enough that we could build up a consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that as you get faster, you're going to keep the same technique. You just speed it up. So I suggest playing a note. You grab the bow, the string right and left. Then you have like 2 rests when you're prepping for the next thing. So I'll show you. We'll put a little rest in it. We're going to play 1, rest, rest, 1, rest, 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 rest. Meanwhile, see my fingers are really quick. Rest, rest, rest. See my fingers very quick. Rest. See how quick I was. Rest, 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 rest. You see my fingers were like immediately going to the next thing. My bow is immediately going to the next note.
Yeah.
And I'm wiggling and I'm thinking ahead. Of course, you're reading the notes, so you're also thinking, wait, what position, what, like, you gotta think ahead. It helps your sight reading too.
Okay.
Let's try it. Let's just see if you can do the first measure. Curve your fingers, good bow hold. All this is also counting. Ready, go, wiggle. Next note, wiggle, and. Get first finger ready, wiggle, and. Get second finger ready. It's going too fast.
I'm not resting.
Yeah, right. You're doing 1 beat, 2 beats instead of 1 beat instead of 2.
Yeah, okay.
Again, 1, 2, 3. Wiggle and first finger. Wiggle and second finger and fourth finger. Relax your fingers and no pressure on the thumb. You forgot to wiggle and curve. Wiggle. First finger wiggle. You forgot wiggling. Wiggle every time. Rest. Rest. Third finger is too far away. Third finger's too far away. Go ahead. Third finger. It's too far away because it's going to be flat. You're like this. Wiggle. You're on the wrong string. Yeah.
Oh, I thought we were just doing 1 measure.
Okay, but
Yeah.
okay. So that's I thought you were going on. I forgot about that.
That's
But
a lot of thinking. Okay.
do you see how they do it?
Yeah.
Now it's really intense way of practicing. But if you did it like once, you're going to be way ahead. Like because you learn every note. And of course, you can split it up. If you notice, this piece has lots of repeats. So it has here, and then here is it looks like the same thing as before. See? Especially these 4 measures are the same as these 4 measures.
Mm-hmm.
These 4 measures are different than these 4 measures. Okay?
Okay.
And then this is different, of course, and then this is all different. And then the ending is all different stuff that you haven't seen. So sometimes you'll find see these 4 measures are the same as those 4 measures we talked about here. Sometimes that happens, not all the time. But you if you work on these 4 measures, you may work on another 4 measures, or 16 measures because it repeats.
Yeah.
So, but that's how you do all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And once you do all of that, and like I said before, you can split it up. So maybe you go from here to right here, and then from here to I don't know, like right here. So you kind of split it up, and then from here to like, right here. This is a big spot, and the ending.
Yeah.
Because this whole thing here is kind of difficult, actually.
Okay.
But if you split it, you could also split up your music into 4, 5, 6 parts. And so in your practice time, you say, oh, I need to practice this, but I'm only going to do part A. In fact, this is called a star system. You give it a star, you put an A, star A, or star 1, or star 2.
Okay.
We call it star system.
Okay.
So now, besides putting the stars in and just like deciding what you're going to practice, it also can help you understand form, like form and analysis.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at it, you're like, I think this is like a theme. This is like a second theme. This is like a transition. So you could start putting stars in where you think the music calls for it, like because of certain points in the music that highlight the form of that piece. It's just an etude, but it's kind of nice to know the form of it because it gives you an idea where you are in the story, and at the same time, it gives you an idea how to practice.
Yeah.
Because if you're only doing star 2 and 3, that's all you're doing that day.
Yeah.
Think about kids who kids. It's hard for them to do homework or to do work of any kind, but if you have a game for them to do. Like there's a brilliant game that was created for Suzuki Cello. You get your bow, and there's like a little. You get like a fake bow, and it looks like a fishing line. You put a little line here with a magnet at the bottom, and you make these fish out of paper, and you color them, and you put numbers on them. You put a paper clip or a staple on them, and when you're doing this with your magnet, you can pick up one of the fish, like you're fishing. And then you get a fish and say, "Oh, you got number 2. We're gonna do ski jumps for those." So you do the ski jumps. You do like this, and you do all these other exercises for them. But what's cool about it, not only because it's a game and they're practicing their bow hold and how to bob them down this way. See, kids are also happy because they know that there's only 8, 10 fish or whatever, and that's it. Once the fish are done, their game is done, and that's. But for parents, it's really nice because they practice 10 things. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, we're adults. I'm not going to do the fishing game with you,
Yeah.
but you could put down star system and like spread, separate out the different areas. You could go line by line if you want to. It's like, line 10, I can't play. I got to practice that today.
Mm-hmm.
You could go measure by measure. You could say, okay, measure 10 to 15. I'm going to work on. Those are the hardest measures. In fact, if you don't have an idea about the form, I would suggest you number the measures, and that way you can practice by the measure number. The only thing I would recommend besides this, the other thing would be to practice what you think is the hardest thing first. Look at the end of the piece. Practice more there at the beginning of your practice instead of the beginning of the music. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Because sometimes people practice like the first measure over and over again. But there are more measures in there, and probably harder ones. So be careful about practicing the first page too much. So numbering your measures, understanding the form, and then being very specific with your practice. You got the timer and all that. It's a good idea. Now next, you need to work on your tunnel fingers. Your fingers are like platypus. Curve them. On your fingertips and use your arm to support. There you go.
I think it kind of just comes and goes. I think I just forget about it. And they just
And when you're playing, this piece is a good idea to keep thinking about it. Next is this piece. We're going to have double stops where there are no double stops. What does that mean? Look at this one measure here. This one.
You mean where I can play double stops?
Yeah. So like string crossings. So these 3 notes, you could get 2 of them on the A and 1 on the D. So you could play like this. The next 2. double stops gives you not only helps you to understand intonation, because when you compare the notes, you're like, oh, that's out of tune, and you can play them better. You can also play from position to position, so you develop like block fingering instead of finger to finger. And so that's how you practice it. If you have string crosses like this over 2 strings, you know, you're skipping a string over 3 strings. I mean, that it's impossible to do double stops. But you can play double stops with pizzicato, and then you can learn how your fingers can stay up near the string.
Oh, that sounds cool.
Yeah. So.
Sounds Spanish.
Yeah, so it was a lot of fun. You'll notice my fingers. Instead of.
Yeah.
You understand? So you can train yourself with pizzicato if they're across the strings. Otherwise, look for ways that you can play with double stops. Here's this measure here. See how I do
Yeah.
that? Now, when it's possible, do it.
Okay.
All right. What time is it? I don't even know. I think we are. So, excellent, sir.
This was a very good lesson. I learned a lot.
Well, I'm glad.
Also got a coffee.
Yeah. You get coffee, you get a lesson.